some ways goes back decades, but most immediately goes back to the national security law that went into effect July 1 and the protests in the year leading up to that from 2019. Basically, there is a genuine public health COVID concern, but I think the widespread and quite plausible view is that this would be politically volatile, and that if last year's district council elections are any indication, that the Democrats, including candidates who've been disqualified, probably would have done pretty well if the election had been held in a timely way.
With this new national security law now in effect, we have seen some pretty high-profile arrests in recent days. What is the message here, and how do you read these recent moves?
Well, I think most people who've watched this were not surprised at the general trajectory, but the pace at which the national security law was issued and the pace with which it's been implemented to arrest the 10 most recently and some students before that, and protesters who took to the streets on the reversion anniversary day on July 1st, the first day of the law. That's a lot happening very quickly, and it's been some very high-profile people, and that's gotten attention abroad as well as within Hong Kong, and I think it feeds this narrative that this law is very broad and is very flexible in its meaning and is being implemented quite assertively.
And that being said, you know, Hong Kong has been struggling with some recent COVID-19 cases. Let's turn to economic recovery. This is a global financial hub. Between the pandemic and this new national security law, do you think companies and corporations are rethinking their bases there, their presence there, and how do you think that will be affected?
I think it's certainly something to watch. The pandemic has really complicated implications. It's not led to super rapid decoupling. I think there's a hope that one can sort of wait that out. But the political risks, I think, are a good deal bigger, and everybody's trying to suss them out. But it's not just the national security law in Hong Kong. It's the U.S. response to that. We've seen that with WeChat and TikTok and other such measures. So I think there is this real concern of an escalating spiral of U.S.-China tensions, with each taking measures, including sanctions and bannings, that can make it very hard to navigate the tricky business of doing business with both the U.S. and China at the same time.
That's right. It's like whiplash. I mean, every day it seems like there's something new, and Hong Kong has certainly been just one of many issues that have come into play with reaction here by each side. How do you see this relationship playing out? Up through the election, past the election, do you think we'll see even more tit-for-tat actions, not just on these issues, but others?
I think it's a real risk. I think what we're seeing is a bunch of what seem like discrete issues, but they really feed into one another and are part of this larger downturn in relations, which some are already calling a new Cold War. It's going to be an interesting moment because, of course, as you point out, the U.S. is heading into its elections. I think everybody should be aware, and probably is aware, that the view that the U.S. relationship with China is not going great, and that the U.S. should take a tougher stance toward China than in years past. That's very widely held. But I don't think that there is a consensus about how tough to get and how to go about it. And there, I think the Trump administration almost has the feel of trying to burn everything down in the short run. I think you would see some similar goals, but very different tactics from a Biden administration. So I think we may see this uncomfortable moment where there are temptations on both sides to escalation, and the question is, what do things look like after the election? If it's a continued Trump administration or a new Biden administration, that could be a moment for a partial reset, but not back to where things were 5 years ago.